It started like it always does, with something that felt small, innocent even. My daughter-in-law, Emily, had called me earlier that week sounding unusually sweet. "Mary," we were thinking, "you should come over Saturday, maybe have lunch with us." "It's been too long," she said, her voice sugar-coated in a way that made my stomach tighten. I should have known better. The last few months hadn't exactly been warm between us. Actually, if I'm being honest, ever since she married my son Daniel, there's always been this tension, but Daniel insisted. "Mom, let's not start. She's my wife, please. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing." So, against my better judgment, I agreed. Saturday at noon. Her tone felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. When I pulled up to their house that day, everything already felt off. Emily met me at the door with a big smile plastered across her face, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. "Mary, come in, she chirped, pulling me into a hug she hadn't given me in years. "Daniel's just finishing up some stuff in the office. Come sit." She led me into the kitchen where a pot of coffee was brewing. There was no lunch being prepared. No smell of food, no pans, no cutting boards. Just coffee. Just enough to say we offered something. We made small talk for about 10 minutes. It was forced. I noticed Emily checking her phone constantly. Then, Daniel walked in, holding a thick envelope in his hands. His face was tight, serious, but trying hard to look casual. "Hey, Mom," he said, giving me a quick side hug. Actually, there's something we wanted to run by you. Some paperwork. Simple stuff." My body stiffened. "Paperwork?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Yeah, it's nothing complicated." Emily jumped in before Daniel could finish. "Just some updates, standard things. Estate, planning, financial protections. Things like that. For the family." She pulled a chair out for me at the dining table, placing the envelope right in front of me. Daniel sat across, Emily to my right. Daniel opened the envelope and slid a stack of documents toward me. "It's just, making sure everything's squared away in case, well, anything ever happens, just being proactive." I looked down. The first page was full of legal language. Clauses, sections, terms. Things that didn't make immediate sense. Emily leaned in, tapping the bottom corner of the page. "Right here. Just needs your signature. It's all straightforward." I didn't move. My eyes scanned the page, but none of it felt straightforward. "What exactly is this?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Daniel cleared his throat. "It's a consolidation form. It'll make things easier. Tax-wise, legal-wise. Nothing changes day to day. It's efficiency." I could feel my heartbeat rising. "Can I read through this first?" Emily chuckled, too quickly. "Of course, sure, but it's, standard." I flipped to the second page. More legal terms. "Transfer of," I read quietly, my stomach twisting. "Transfer of property ownership." I glanced at Daniel. He didn't meet my eyes. "Daniel," I said, my voice sharper now. "Is this transferring my house?" "No," he said too fast. "Well, not exactly. Look, Mom, it's just paperwork. On paper, yeah, it would technically, but nothing changes for you." My hand went cold. "Nothing changes for me?" "Daniel, my name would be removed from the property. Just temporarily," Emily added quickly. "It's for asset protection. In case of liabilities, it's safer this way. We've been advised." "Advised by who?" I asked. She waved her hand like the name didn't matter. "Just professionals." I pushed the paper back toward them. "I'm not signing anything I don't understand." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Mom, you're overthinking this." "Am I?" I asked quietly. Emily placed her hand over mine. "Mary, really, we wouldn't ask you to do anything that's not good for the family. Trust us." Something inside me snapped in that moment. Trust them? The same woman who hadn't returned a single one of my calls in months? The same daughter-in-law who blocked me from attending my own granddaughter's recital? I forced a polite smile. I don't have my reading glasses. I'll take this home. Look it over. It wasn't just four walls and a roof anymore. It was safe. It was mine. Rachel helped me finalize every protection possible. We closed every loophole. The house was now locked into an irrevocable trust with my name and no one else's. The accounts were protected with multi-step verifications and legal barriers that Daniel and Emily couldn't touch if they tried for the rest of their lives. Even my will was updated. Ironically, Daniel and Emily were no longer in it. Instead, everything would go to a local charity supporting elderly women who had been victims of financial abuse. That felt right. I hadn't told Daniel. I hadn't told Emily. They didn't deserve to know. One Saturday morning, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize flashed across the screen. For a moment, my heart raced. But something in me had changed. I wasn't afraid anymore. I answered. "Mom," Daniel's voice said on the other end. His tone was flat, tired, not angry, but defeated. I said nothing. I waited. He cleared his throat. I just wanted to. I don't even know why I'm calling. Still, I said nothing. Daniel continued. Things haven't been good. Emily, she's left. Filed for divorce last week. I blinked, but I wasn't surprised, she said. She said this isn't what she signed up for. That everything's falling apart. There was a long silence. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer comfort. I lost the house, Daniel said quietly. I'm staying in a friend's spare room. I guess I deserve it. Another silence. I don't know what to say, Mom, Daniel added. I messed up. Finally, I spoke. Yes? You did. Daniel inhaled sharply. He wasn't expecting that. Not from me. Not anymore. I never wanted it to come to this, he said, his voice cracking. I don't know what I thought. I thought that you'd be fine, that it was fair, that it wasn't a big deal. It was my home, Daniel, I said, my voice steady. It was everything I worked for my entire life, and you tried to take it from me. You didn't just betray me. You destroyed the idea of family for me. I know, he whispered. I know. I let the silence linger. I'm not calling to ask for anything, he added quickly. I swear. I don't know. I just wanted you to know. That I know now? I nodded to myself. I hope you figure out who you are without hurting anyone else. Yeah, Daniel said. Yeah, I hung up. And that was the last time I heard from him. Emily never called, never texted, never reached out. From what Rachel later told me, she had remarried within a year, moved 2 states away, started fresh. Daniel stayed in town for a while, then he didn't. I don't know where he went, and I stopped caring. Life, without them, was better than I ever imagined. The weight of obligation, the constant demand for love, attention, money, and sacrifice, was gone. And in its place was something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I joined a book club. I started taking morning walks again. I even signed up for a pottery class at the community center. At first, I felt out of place, like someone who had forgotten how to live for herself. But that faded. Week by week, I remembered how. The friends I made in that class became more like family than Daniel or Emily ever were. Women who had been through their own battles. Some had husbands who left them after 40 years. Some had children who stopped calling. Some were widows, some were divorced. But all of them knew what it was like to rebuild. We laughed, we shared stories, and we never judged. One afternoon, as I was glazing a small ceramic vase, one of the women, Susan, asked, "Do you have any kids?" I paused for a moment, then smiled. I used to. The others nodded like they understood exactly what I meant. And they did. Months passed. Seasons changed. My garden bloomed. My house stayed quiet. And one morning, as I sat on the back porch with coffee in hand, listening to the birds, I realized something simple but powerful. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't grieving the loss of Daniel, or Emily, or the idea of family that never really existed the way I thought it did. I was peaceful, truly peaceful, and that was something no one could take from me ever again. She pulled records of emails between Daniel and their financial advisor where they discussed future ownership of the house, months before they ever spoke to me about it. When the court date arrived, I walked in with Rachel by my side, feeling stronger than I had in months. Daniel and Emily were already seated at the defendant's table. Daniel's face was tight, jaw clenched. Emily's eyes were red, like she'd been crying, or trying to make it look that way. Their lawyer, Mr. Carver, was visibly uncomfortable. He knew what was coming. The judge opened the session. We are here today on the matter of Carter versus Carter regarding financial exploitation, attempted fraud, and elder abuse. Counsel, proceed. Rachel stood. Her voice was clear, firm. Your Honor, what my client experienced was not a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated attempt by her son and daughter-in-law to illegally gain control of her assets. This is not speculation. We have documented evidence of intent. She methodically laid it all out. The fraudulent loan application, the text messages, the paper trail of Daniel and Emily preparing to transfer ownership of my home to themselves, long before I was ever told about it. Rachel finished with one final statement. Your Honor, if not for my client's caution and, frankly, her instinct that something was wrong, she would have lost her home, her savings, and her independence. This is not a family dispute. This is financial abuse. The judge turned to Mr. Carver. Counsel? Mr. Carver shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, my clients, this was a miscommunication. The judge's eyes narrowed. A miscommunication does not involve bank fraud. Silence. The judge continued, voice firm. This is one of the most blatant abuses of trust this court has seen in some time. Emily broke first. We didn't mean... The judge raised her hand. Be quiet. She turned back to the bench. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mary Carter. The defendants, Daniel Carter and Emily Carter, are ordered to pay restitution for legal fees, damages for emotional distress, and financial penalties associated with attempted fraud. The judge's gavel came down. Furthermore, this court grants a permanent financial protection order. The defendants are barred from initiating any financial transactions, requests, or legal filings related to Mary Carter's estate without court approval. It was over. As we left the courthouse, Daniel stood by the exit, arms crossed. His face was pale, furious. You're happy now? He spat. You've ruined everything. Emily stood behind him, shaking her head. You're pathetic, she hissed. Rachel stepped between us. Walk away! Right now! Daniel glared but said nothing. He grabbed Emily's arm and stormed off. I stood there for a moment, watching them disappear down the street, realizing that for the first time in years, I was free. Free from the manipulation. Free from the guilt. Free from the exhausting cycle of being taken advantage of by the people I had loved the most. Rachel turned to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. You did it. You protected yourself. I nodded. I never thought it would come to this, but I'm glad it did. Sometimes, she said, the only way to stop people like that is to show them there are consequences. When I got home that evening, my house felt different. It felt mine again, safer, quieter. There were no more documents to sign, no more fake smiles to pretend to accept. No more dinners where every word was a manipulation. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on the back porch, and let the silence wash over me. They were out of my life. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like peace. It had been 2 months, Since the court ruled in my favor, 2 months of silence. No calls, no emails, no letters, nothing from Daniel or Emily. It was as if they vanished from my life, and honestly, it was exactly what I needed. For the first time in years, I woke up every morning without that pit in my stomach. No more anxiety about what they might try next. No more rehearsing conversations in my head or wondering when the next manipulation would come. I spent the first few weeks focusing on simple things I hadn't given myself permission to enjoy in years. Cleaning out the attic, planting flowers in the front yard, cooking meals just for myself, without having to factor in anyone else's preferences or attitudes. My house felt different now. That was cleaner than I expected. I nodded, but my hands were still shaking. I don't even know how to feel. You feel relieved, she said. You feel safe, and you remember that they showed you exactly who they are. I looked back at the courthouse door where Daniel and Emily had disappeared. They were done pretending. So was I. The days following the hearing were quieter than I expected. Neither Daniel nor Emily called. No texts, no emails, nothing. For a moment, I wondered if they'd finally given up, realized the damage they'd caused, and decided to back off. But deep down, I knew better. Rachel had warned me. People like this don't just walk away. They regroup. They look for another angle. And she was right. By the end of the week, a thick envelope arrived at my door. It wasn't from Daniel or Emily. It was from their attorney, Mr. Carver. Inside was a formal demand letter claiming emotional distress, damages due to false accusations, and harm to their reputation within the family. It was laughable, but not surprising. I called Rachel immediately. You were right, I said, barely holding my composure. They're trying something else, Rachel sighed. Of course they are. Let me guess. Emotional distress? Reputational damage? Exactly. I've seen this before, she said flatly. It's textbook. They failed to take your assets through fraud, failed to gain control through a guardianship scam, and now they're trying to intimidate you into a settlement by threatening a civil suit. They really think I'm scared of this? I asked. Rachel didn't even hesitate. No, they think you're tired. They think that if they pile enough stress on you, you'll fold. I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the demand letter spread out in front of me. It was written like I was the villain. Me, the woman who raised Daniel, bailed him out of debt more times than I could count, helped him through college, helped with their down payment on their first house. I was the one who paid for birthday, parties, unexpected car repairs, and even helped when Emily lost her job years ago. And now, I was the bad guy. I clenched my fists. What do we do? Rachel's response was instant. We go on offense. The next day, I met Rachel at her office. Her assistant had already prepared a full folder with documents, witness statements, and timelines. Here's the plan, Rachel said, sliding the folder toward me. We file a countersuit. For what? I asked. Attempted financial exploitation, Rachel answered without blinking. Fraudulent misrepresentation, abuse of legal process, and, most importantly, elder abuse. I blinked. Elder abuse? Yes, Rachel nodded. This state has very clear statutes. Attempting to unlawfully gain control of an elderly person's finances, even if it fails, qualifies as elder financial abuse, and that's exactly what this was. I swallowed. Is it? Is it the right move? Rachel leaned forward. Mary, this isn't about revenge. This is about making it stop. You need a restraining order in place so they can't come near your assets again. You need the court to issue an injunction preventing them from filing baseless legal actions like this in the future. I nodded, slowly. I never wanted it to come to this. No one ever does, Rachel said quietly. But here we are. We filed the suit the next morning. Within 48 hours, Daniel and Emily's lawyer called Rachel in a panic, asking to settle privately. Rachel refused. No settlement discussions until my client is fully protected. We're moving forward. The following week, Daniel sent me an email. Mom, I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've done for you, after all the years we've tried to help you, this is disgusting. You're tearing this family apart. I stared at the screen, stunned at the audacity. They were the victims now. In their minds, they had done nothing wrong. No apology, no reflection, no ownership of their actions. I didn't reply. The first court appearance was set for 3 weeks later. By then, Rachel had built a solid case. She pulled bank records showing that Daniel and Emily had tried to open a joint line of credit using my name without my consent. They'd started the process 3 weeks before presenting me with the documents to sign. She uncovered text messages Emily had sent to one of her friends complaining that Mary's being stubborn. If she just signs, everything will be easier for all of us. An hour later, Emily texted me, "Mary, please, let's be reasonable. You need help. We're just trying to do the right thing. Don't force this into something ugly." I didn't reply. By Friday morning, the hearing was scheduled. Rachel prepared everything. I spent hours sitting in her office, reviewing documents, signing affidavits, gathering evidence. Rachel pulled out phone records. "Look at this," she said, pointing. "We can show consistent communication. Texts, calls, you were paying bills, handling appointments, no signs of confusion." She printed receipts from my utility payments, medical appointments, grocery deliveries. "All of this proves that you've been functioning fully independently." She looked at me across the desk. "Mary, you are the dream client for this type of case. You're organized. You've managed your finances perfectly. This isn't even going to be close." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "But they're still my family." Rachel's eyes softened slightly. "I know, and that's the worst part." The morning of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse feeling like my legs were made of cement. Daniel and Emily were already there, sitting together. Emily was dressed like she was attending a funeral. Black blouse, dark skirt, hair perfectly done, eyes downcast as if she were grieving. Daniel barely glanced at me. His face was a mixture of fake concern and cold calculation. When Rachel and I entered the courtroom, Emily deliberately avoided eye contact. Daniel whispered something to Quirk. "Her!" And she nodded, squeezing his hand like they were the victims. The judge entered, a middle-aged woman named Judge Simmons. Her face was unreadable. The hearing started with Daniel's lawyer, a man named Mr. Carver, presenting their case. His voice was smooth, rehearsed. "Your Honor, this isn't an easy matter for my clients. They are here today because they love Mary deeply. Unfortunately, over the past year, they have observed significant cognitive decline. Mary has exhibited memory lapses, confusion regarding her finances, and difficulty managing daily tasks. My clients are simply requesting temporary financial guardianship until a full evaluation can be conducted." He slid a stack of papers forward. "We have written statements, including from Mrs. Emily Carter, who has witnessed firsthand Mary's increasing inability to handle her affairs." Rachel stood immediately. "Your Honor, this is nothing but an attempt at financial exploitation. We have clear, undeniable evidence that Mary has been and continues to be fully capable of managing her own finances." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Rachel laid everything out. Bank statements, tax filings, medical records, text messages, emails. She even played a voicemail from just last week where Daniel asked me to bring the casserole for Sunday's dinner and reminded me of the time, clear evidence that no one thought I was mentally compromised then. Rachel finished with one simple sentence. "This is not about Mary's well-being. This is about greed." The judge turned to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, do you have medical evidence to support your claim?" Daniel's lawyer shuffled papers. "Not at this time, Your Honor, but—" Judge Simmons held up her hand. "Then why was this petition filed before a medical evaluation?" Silence. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Emily stared at the floor. The judge continued, her voice sharper. "This court does not take allegations of incapacity lightly. Filing such a claim without proper evidence is highly inappropriate and, frankly, suspicious." Daniel opened his mouth. "Your Honor, we were just concerned." "Concerned?" The judge leaned forward. "Or opportunistic?" Emily finally snapped. "She's difficult. She refuses to listen. She won't do what's best for the family. Judge Simmons narrowed her eyes. There it is. Silence fell over the courtroom like a heavy blanket. Rachel stood. Your Honor, we request not only that this petition be dismissed with prejudice, but that the court consider sanctions for the misuse of the guardianship process. The judge didn't even hesitate. Petition denied. Sanctions hearing scheduled for next Friday. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, you are dismissed. The gavel came down. It was over. As we left the courtroom, Daniel stormed out without a word. Emily shot me one last glare before grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the parking. Rachel turned to me, exhaling sharply. Well, gathering my purse. I think I've heard enough for tonight. Emily's smile was gone. Mary, come on. Don't be dramatic. I walked to the door, Daniel trailing behind. Mom, he said, voice lower now. You really don't want to create tension in the family over something like this. I opened the door. Daniel, the tension isn't coming from me. For a brief second, his face dropped. Gone was the fake smile, the casual charm. What replaced it was something cold, entitled, ugly. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. We'll talk soon, he said stiffly. I nodded once and left. As I pulled out of their driveway, hands shaking, I realized something chilling. They truly believed they were entitled to everything I owned. They weren't asking for help. They weren't concerned about my future. They were circling me like vultures, and if I hadn't caught it in time, I would have signed myself into ruin. But not anymore. No more pretending. No more giving the benefit of the doubt. The next time I sat across from them, it wouldn't be at their dinner table. It would be with my lawyer sitting next to me, and they wouldn't be ready. 2 days passed without a word from Daniel or Emily. Not a text, not a call, nothing. The silence was loud. I wasn't naive enough to think they had given up. I knew them better now. That dinner wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new phase. By Wednesday morning, Rachel called me. Mary, she said, her voice sharp. I need you to come to my office today. Something came up. My stomach tightened. What is it? Just come. Now. I drove to her office with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The moment I walked into her office, Rachel handed me a stack of papers. Daniel and Emily filed for a temporary financial guardianship over you, she said bluntly. My knees almost gave out. I sat hard in the chair. What does that mean? Rachel exhaled, her fingers drumming on her desk. It means they're claiming that you're mentally incompetent to handle your finances. For a moment, the room felt like it spun. You're joking. I wish I was. I scanned the papers. The claims were disgusting. Emily had written a statement saying I'd been confused, forgetful, and prone to making irrational decisions lately. Daniel backed it up with his own statement, claiming I had recently forgotten conversations and had become paranoid about financial matters. They're painting you as senile, Rachel said, as someone incapable of managing her own estate. I gripped the papers, my hands trembling. They know it's not true. Of course they do. But that doesn't stop people like them from trying. If a judge believes any of this, they could gain control over your finances temporarily until a full hearing. I stared at her. What happens then? Then we fight. And we will win, Rachel said firmly. I've already filed an immediate objection. I've also requested that the hearing be expedited. But Mary, they were fast. They were ready for this. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They planned this. A cold, bitter realization settled over me. How long? How long had they been preparing this behind my back? How many times had I sat at their dinner table while they smiled at me, knowing full well they were planning to strip me of everything? Rachel continued. The good news is that you haven't signed anything. Your assets are protected. They don't know that yet. They believe everything is still vulnerable. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. So, what now? Rachel leaned forward. Now, we let them walk right into the trap they set for you. That afternoon, the phone calls started. First, Daniel, Mom, he said, voice suddenly soft, like he was the concerned, loving son again. We just want what's best for you. Look, Emily and I, we didn't want to do it this way. But you've seemed off lately. You've been confused, forgetful. We had to step in. I didn't respond. I just let him talk. It's not personal, he continued. It's just, we're trying to protect the family. If you agree to sign, to voluntarily let us help manage things, we can cancel the court stuff. Keep it private. There it was. The fake olive branch. The sign this or we'll drag you through court threat. I kept my voice steady. I'll think about it. Daniel sighed like he was the victim. Please, Mom, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. I hung up. A part of me knew I had to play along. Rachel's words echoed in my mind. Don't confront them until everything's secure. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. But I was ready to watch them lie to my face. Sure, I replied. Dinner. Sounds good. When I pulled into their driveway that evening, the house looked exactly as it always did. Perfectly trimmed lawn, 2 cars in the garage, porch lights glowing warmly. If anyone drove by, they'd see a picture-perfect family gathering. They wouldn't see the rot underneath. Emily greeted me at the door with an exaggerated smile, cheeks a little too tight, lips pulled back like a pageant contestant. Mary, you made it! I'm so glad! Her tone was syrupy, fake. Daniel appeared behind her holding a bottle of wine. Hey, Mom, come in, come in. I stepped inside. The smell of garlic, tomatoes, and something sweet filled the air. The dining table was already set. Nice dishes, wine glasses, cloth napkins. They were putting on a show. Emily gestured toward the living room. Sit, relax. Dinner's almost ready. I sat on the couch, clutching my purse like a life vest. Daniel sat opposite me, swirling his wine. So, he began, crossing his leg over the other. Have you had a chance to look over the documents? I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. I did? And? Emily leaned in from the kitchen, doorway, feigning curiosity. I'm still thinking, I replied carefully. Some of the wording confused me. Daniel laughed lightly. It's just legalese, Mom. Standard stuff. Emily chimed in. Exactly. It just sounds scarier than it is. I watched them both. The way Daniel avoided my eyes. The way Emily fidgeted with her necklace every time she lied. It was almost insulting how bad they were at hiding it. Dinner was served soon after. Emily placed the lasagna on the table like she was hosting a holiday feast. Garlic bread, salad, even a small cake on the counter labeled Family First in cheap frosting. I nearly laughed. As we sat, Emily filled my wine glass. To family, she said, raising hers. Daniel followed, clinking his glass against hers and then mine. To family. I forced a smile. To family. Throughout the meal, they kept the conversation painfully light. Weather, the neighbors, how expensive groceries were getting. But under every word was an unspoken tension, a waiting, an expectation. Then Daniel casually slid a new stack of papers across the table. Since you had questions, he said, we simplified it. Less confusing this time. My heart thudded, but I kept my face blank. I picked up the papers, pretending to scan the first page. Looks shorter, I commented. It is, Emily jumped in. Just the basics. The house transfer, the vehicle, the accounts. Everything else is boilerplate. I set the papers down. Why is this so urgent? I asked quietly. Daniel stiffened. It's not urgent, Mom. It's just responsible. Look, Emily and I have been reading about how complicated things get when people don't plan ahead. Probate court, taxes, lawyers. He shook his head dramatically. We're just trying to avoid that mess. Emily nodded enthusiastically. It's about protecting the family. You don't want the government taking a chunk of everything, right? The audacity of it made my skin crawl. They were still pretending this was for my benefit. I see, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. Honestly, Mom, the longer we wait, the riskier it gets. Anything can happen. An accident. Health issues. Emily placed a hand over mine. We just want to make sure you're safe. And that the family's future is secure. I pulled my hand away, gently but firmly. Let me sleep on it. Daniel's smile slipped for a split second. Mom, we've been over this. What's there to think about? I just want to be thorough, I replied, matching his tone. Surely you can appreciate that. Emily's mouth tightened. It would really help us if we could. Get this settled tonight. There it was. The slip. It would help us. I looked Daniel straight in the eye. Why? What happens if we don't? He blinked. Nothing. I don't like loose ends. Emily stood, gathering plates with more force than necessary. Mary, you're overcomplicating this. I don't think I am, I replied, calmly. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stood. But ever since he married Emily, things changed. Rachel nodded slowly. I hate to ask, but are you financially supporting them? I swallowed hard. Not directly, but I paid for a few things, helped with their down payment years ago, gave them money when Daniel got laid off during the pandemic, covered daycare when their second child was born, things like that. Rachel's eyes narrowed. And was there ever an agreement that you'd transfer ownership of your home? Absolutely not. Good, Rachel said firmly. Then let me be clear. If you had signed this, you would have lost everything, and recovering it. Well, we could try, but it'd be a long, expensive legal fight. The blood drained from my face. Rachel, what do I do now? Well, first, she said, gathering the papers into a neat stack. You do not confront them yet. That's the worst thing you can do. I blinked. Why? Because they'll either try to twist the story, guilt trip you, or rush you into signing something else. People like this, whether it's greed, entitlement, or desperation, they don't like getting caught, and when they feel cornered, they get nastier. I nodded slowly, processing every word. She wasn't wrong. I'd seen hints of it before. The passive-aggressive comments. The way Emily acted like every favor I did was expected, never appreciated. So, Rachel continued, the first thing we do is secure your assets. What does that mean? It means, she said, pulling a notepad toward her, we make sure they can't access anything else. Do you have joint accounts with Daniel? No. Only help them with a few checks here and there. Good. Do they have keys to your house? My face flushed. Yes. Change the locks, she said flatly. Today. My throat tightened. It feels extreme. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes dead serious. Mary, this isn't about being polite anymore. This is about protecting yourself. You're not overreacting. If anything, you're lucky you caught this before you signed. I nodded slowly. Okay, locks. What else? Do you have a will? Yes, but it's old. Then we update it immediately. And we file it officially, not just a piece of paper in a drawer somewhere. She wrote down a list. Change locks, update will, transfer house title into a protected trust. Remove Daniel as emergency contact on any accounts, medical or financial. What about confronting them? I asked. Rachel shook her head. Not yet. Not until everything's locked down. Then, you decide if you want to go no contact or if you want to let them know exactly how much you know. I sat there in silence, processing all of it. Mary, Rachel added softly, you're not alone in this. You'd be surprised how many parents, especially mothers, come in here with stories like yours. You didn't do anything wrong by trusting them. But you're doing something right now. I nodded, blinking back a sting in my eyes. I never thought it would come to this. No one ever does, Rachel said. But now, you're in control. When I left Rachel's office, my legs felt like jelly. I drove straight to the locksmith. The man there didn't ask questions. He just nodded when I said I needed everything changed. Front door, back door, garage. By the time I got home, I stood at my front step, staring at the door like I was seeing my house for the first time. My house, not theirs, not anyone else's. The locksmith worked. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. Emily's name flashed on the screen. A text. "Hey Mary, just checking in. Any questions about the paperwork? We can help walk you through it if anything was confusing." I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down. By the time the locksmith finished, I felt a little steadier, safer. But this wasn't over. Not even close. By Monday afternoon, the locks were changed. My accounts were secure, and my assets were in the process of being legally protected under the trust Rachel was setting up for me. But something inside me still felt unsettled. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization of how close I had come to losing everything. Then, late that afternoon, Daniel called. His voice was casual, almost cheerful. "Hey, Mom. Emily's cooking lasagna tonight. Why don't you come by for dinner? We can. Go over any questions you had about the paperwork." I paused. The audacity, the assumption that I would just brush past the fact they tried to rob me blind. Still, maybe run it by someone. Daniel was quick. "You don't need to do all that, Mom. It's just a simple sign and be done thing." "Really?" Emily leaned in closer. "Yeah, Mary. Honestly, the sooner we do this, the better. It protects all of us." "No," I said, sharper this time. "I'm taking it home." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom, come on. Don't be difficult." I stood. "I'm not being difficult. I'm being careful." Emily exchanged a quick look with Daniel. Her smile disappeared. Her eyes hardened. "Fine," she said, her voice cold now. "Take it, but don't take too long." I nodded, folded the documents carefully, and slid them into my bag. The ride home felt longer than it actually was. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage, from betrayal, from the gut-wrenching realization that my own son, my only son, had just tried to steal from me, not just money, not just the house, but my security, my future, my independence. I barely set my purse down before I was dialing Margaret's number, my friend from church, whose daughter was a lawyer. "Margaret," I said, my voice trembling, "do you think your daughter could look at something for me?" There was silence on the other end for a second. "Mary, what's wrong?" I'm not sure yet, but I think Emily and Daniel just tried to trick me into signing something, and I need to know exactly what." Margaret's daughter, Rachel, agreed to see me first thing the next morning. She ran her own small legal practice downtown, mostly handling estate planning, contracts, and family matters. I barely slept that night. I kept staring at the envelope, the stack of papers sitting on my kitchen table, wondering how long this plan had been in motion. How many dinners had I sat through? How many birthday parties had I attended? While Daniel and Emily smiled to my face, knowing what they were planning, I showed up at Rachel's office right when they opened. The receptionist, a young girl named Claire, greeted me kindly and offered me coffee while Rachel finished with a client. I sat there, hands clutching my purse, feeling equal parts angry, hurt, and stupid. "Mary, come on in," Rachel said, waving me into her office. Her office wasn't fancy, just neat, simple, with shelves full of legal books and a big window that overlooked Main Street. I sat down across from her and pulled the envelope from my bag. "I don't even know where to start," I said. "Well, let's start by reading," Rachel replied, opening the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Her face changed fast, neutral at first, then a frown, then her eyebrows knit together so tightly I could practically hear the tension. "Mary," she finally said, setting the papers down, "this isn't estate planning. This isn't about asset protection." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "This," she said, tapping the top page, "is a full transfer of ownership. Of your house, your checking accounts, your certificates of deposit. Even your car." I stared at her. My car? Rachel nodded. Page 4. Vehicle transfer form is right here. My hands felt numb. I don't understand. Why would they? I mean, why? Rachel leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon. I've seen it before. Usually, it's someone trying to secure assets ahead of an anticipated event. A divorce, a bankruptcy, a lawsuit. I blinked. You think Daniel. You think they're... I don't know. But what I do know is that these documents would strip you of every financial asset you own. You wouldn't technically be homeless, because there's a clause that says you have lifetime residency at the property. It sounds nice, Rachel interrupted, but in reality, it means nothing. They could force you into a corner, control when you come, when you go. If repairs need to be done, they decide. If the house is sold, you might not legally be able to stop it. Worst case, they sell it from under you and stick you in some senior living facility you don't want. I sat there stunned. But they said it was, for taxes. Rachel let out a humorless laugh. Of course they did. That's what they always say. But Mary, this isn't about taxes. This is about control. A silence fell between us. I stared down at the papers, rereading the same line over and over, but the words barely registered. How close are you with your son? Rachel asked carefully. I shook my head. We used to be.